Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Marketing Corner. I'm Casper. I have with me my lovely co-host Jen. What are we talking about today, Jen?
Today, we touched a little bit about this in a previous episode, but we're talking about the buyer journey and how we can simplify that when a lead goes from a lead to being a customer. How do we make that easier? And I called this the KISS method. Now, I don't know if this is an American thing, but we call it KISS. Keep it simple, stupid is a thing that we say.
It's
I don't know.
Like it wouldn't surprise me if it's an American concept originally. Like you guys claim a lot of stuff. Like the Americans claim
we just
a
plant a flag in it. That's ours.
Yeah, French fries too, and all that stuff, right? So it wouldn't surprise me, but I've definitely heard a lot about it before. It's not new.
Okay. I was worried that people were gonna get annoyed or offended that I'm calling them stupid. It's just the name of the method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I think that's fine.
Okay, dear.
Have you done a lot of like KISS and buying persona journeys in the past and in your daily job at Dixa?
It's not something we have perfected at Dixa, I'll be honest, but it's something we did a lot at Plan Day, and it's something that I want to bring to Dixa. Dixa has a lot of moving parts at the moment, so that's a little bit harder. But one of the things that we noticed when I was at Plan Day, it was kind of the lead, and I've mentioned this in the previous episode, how it's kind of Planet Marketing, right, and Planet Sales. And they had the not my fucking problem approach of like, I got the lead in, there you go, sales, run with it. And then sales have their own issues with that lead, or maybe it wasn't the best lead, or they needed more information, or maybe they just dropped the lead. Things happen, things fall through the cracks, and we would sometimes see that leads would sit for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and then it's money wasted. So we did do a really in-depth audit of like every touch that the lead has along the journey to becoming a customer, and physically mapped it out of kind of lead comes in, they get a call. Do they answer? No. How many more calls do they get? If they answer, what's the next process? And we found that depending on the size of the customer, they're getting 6 touch points, 5 weeks, or it could go all the way up to 8 touch points, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And one of the things we were finding is a lot of leaks were happening. So if they didn't fit into a particular box, no one was touching that lead. And from a marketing perspective, it was really interesting to map it out, and it's kind of like putting water through your bike tire and seeing where the leaks are. It was a really good exercise, and it takes resources, it takes time, but I think it's a really important exercise because it really gives marketing a good idea, because also any point in the journey someone can drop off, and then that's our chance to reactivate them, right? So say if you get that phone call, you have a 30-minute meeting, and they say, we really like your product, but it's not the right time. We were finding that lead was just being dropped and nothing was happening with them. Yeah. Well, once we identified this, we can make a list of those leads and reactivate them in a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever that is, to keep them going and eventually convert them, because we've already paid for them.
And I think what's really interesting for me here is that, so I'll be real with the listeners here today, and everyone tuning in, is that mapping the buyer persona journey is actually not something I've done a lot, like in my career. I know we did it a little bit. We did it at Templify, and I've done it like a few times in a like very hardcore conversion funnel type metric things. But I haven't done it in. I don't think I've looked at it in a year or 2 years almost, right? To be completely honest, and that doesn't mean it's not relevant, but it means that sometimes I guess I've just prioritized differently, and I think. I have to admit, I did it back. I was especially a fan of some of these things that are called like these cohort analysis things you can do on Google Analytics. Back in the day, I used to do those a lot actually, and look at where people would drop off. So this is very early stage, right, buying journey. So I would look at stuff like that tool-wise, but I've had a hard time making the concept into something I can use. Because what you described here, right, where hey, a lead says I'm not interested and drops off, I would just call it like, okay, I'll do a nurture flow, like I'll do nurture afterwards, and I would always do that. But making it like a bigger picture, I think sometimes that's one of the things I'm really intrigued on making happen in the future.
And I think the way that you do it is the way most people do it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
thanks, but no thanks. Okay, we'll sign you up for a newsletter or something like that, and then we can reactivate you later. And that is, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's just, if you have the resources, and we did, and we have more sophisticated, we had a really good Salesforce setup with a Salesforce administrator who could make these lists for us, so we had the luxury of more resources where we could be just even more personalized. So, for
Mm.
example, if they said, you're a bit expensive, that goes in a pricing list. And then if we're doing an offer, they get that, they get those ads, they get that offer. If they say really bad timing right now, okay, then we'll put them in a different bucket, and then they get personalized ads. So it's just a way of taking it to the next level, if you have the time and resources to do so. But I think it's a really important exercise. And as I said, we haven't actually gone too in depth in this at Dixa yet, because, like you said, I'm so busy focusing on the lead gen part, right?
Yeah.
That I just kind of get the leads in. Sales will say yes or no. This doesn't fit in our ICP. So that's also, we talked about ICPs. That's
Yeah.
also why ICPs really come in handy, because you can kind of look at it early on and go, is this a good fit or not? And
Yes.
then
Yes.
that
I agree.
helps with figuring out what you're going to do with that lead. But maybe they are on paper a good fit, but they just got a new boss. Their boss is in the onboarding phase. They're like, come back in 3 months, 6 months. Now, usually sales will remember to do that, but what can we do to help sales? What can we do to
And
reactivate them?
exactly, right. And like, I think it's not like I did some, like, I'm a huge proponent of personalization, even though it's getting harder and harder every day. But sometimes, we'll talk about it in other episodes. But I'm a huge fan of personalization. I did a lot of that, and I always did it, not always, but I did a lot of it before meeting signups. So I would do. I remember specifically, this is something I've talked about on different shows and other things. But I actually, very early on, 3 years ago, I did like a flow where people could automatically sign up with the drift bots and Calendly links and personalized video messages from sales reps without a sales rep ever touching them before they would actually
Mm,
show up for the demo meeting, right? So I did a
hmm
lot of that stuff, but that's always pre-booking, right? I think my issue, and that's actually a question I wanted to ask you, is so one of the reasons we didn't do too much. Like, what would you do when you had, like, let's say a sales rep would start a conversation with someone, and in B2B, just like Templify was, and fintech is today, it's a long process. It's a super long process, easily up to 6 months, sometimes shorter. You always work on that, but it can be quite cumbersome. How do you, as a marketeer, tap into, like, with emails to feed along the way? Because for us, we had a lot of, like, we literally had no touch zones where, back in Templify, when it was, I remember, where it was like, okay, they're so close to closing, don't fucking send them anything.
Don't do anything. Yeah, we have those as
Don't do
well. Like,
anything. Like,
hands off.
don't touch them. Don't piss them off with anything, right?
Mhm.
And like, that was like a minefield. So I don't know. Like, we I feel like I think they've solved it today, and they probably worked on it today. But back then, it was like, it was hard to nail down what emails you should send from marketing,
Mhm.
how you should nurture these people in the buying journey once they've actually started on that journey.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. And nurture flows, I think, are kind of a different thing in that, yeah, you're signing them up for an email. They're going to get an email. I've never worked in a place where we have the resources to do hyper personalized kind of emails where it's like, okay, your reason for not going through the process was X, so you're going to get this email. I've never done that either. So ours has been purely like, if in Salesforce, they have to assign a reason, right? Assign a reason why this lead is
Mm,
done, basically. And so it'll be pricing, timing, or bad fit. Bad fit, automatically, we can make those dynamic audiences in HubSpot. Anyone who's a bad fit, automatically blocked, excluded from all campaigns, because we just don't want to touch them. Or if there's any reason they're like, do not contact these guys at all, leave them alone, they hate us, that could happen too.
yeah, of course.
So we have those like do not touch lists, but then we would just put those into a pricing campaign, or we would put those
Mm,
into a social proof campaign, because
yeah.
we do the same thing with prospects. Once they are prospecting or they're an engaged lead, as in sales are talking to them, the process is happening. Once they kind of change into that category, they automatically go into a campaign that is social proof.
Yes.
And that is not sign up for a demo. It's just purely like quotes from customers saying how awesome we
Mm,
are, because we
yeah,
don't need them to sign up for a demo, right? They're already in the process. So
that's super
you
smart.
can,
Yeah.
and if you get and again, HubSpot, we talked about this in the tech stack. They're really great at these dynamic lists that they automatically update, right? So as
Yes.
soon as sales tag a lead in a certain way in Salesforce, it automatically will come into HubSpot. It will automatically go into those campaigns and they just keep going. But the
Yeah.
reason you need to map these out is once they change, what happens to them? You know,
Mm.
where do they go? And that's where my team always make fun of me. But back when we could go in the office, you know, I had big whiteboards and I would be drawing like if then, if then, if then, and just kind of mapping out like what happens to this person. Because you'd be amazed at how often people slip through the cracks. And as a marketer,
Yeah.
you know, we are paying upwards of $1,000 for maybe one of these leads. We don't
No,
want to just.
and I think you're like, and I think you're spot on. And one of the things I definitely, and I think I got this from some of my leaders at Templify, and I try to reciprocate that today. And I can take, and we all agree here. But it's like marketing and sales are one, right? Like in my opinion, like we're unified. Like we're in this together. Like it's not this. I hate this constant battle between sales and marketing. It shouldn't exist whatsoever. We're here for the same reason. So my point is, always, my focus has for a long time been like, because what I don't like about traditional marketing is that like process where you just here's the lead, go crazy. Like
Mhm,
I'm gonna step down. So I always try to like, okay, how guys can I help you in this like 4 month process you're about to embark on, or whatever it
mhm,
is, right? And the one thing we did do, I'll start to think about it, is we did have like once we started figuring out, we had more guides and more like content material. Then we started positioning that a little bit based on what they were interested in. But that's also like a pretty resource heavy thing to do. But then he's like,
mhm,
okay, they've put in comments or a checkbox they're interested in this module. Then start what about talk about this module, but I'll talk about some of the other modules. Hey, do you
mm.
also know we have this module and this thing and this thing? But setting that up, oh, that was not that
Well,
easy.
I think you bring up actually a really good point, and there is, you know, the setup that we had again. The companies I work for have been kind of more medium scale up size, so we have had these resources, and I know that a lot of people that listen to this don't necessarily have those kind of resources. But the other things that you can do from a marketing perspective, kind of taking into account what you're saying, but also the lack of resources a lot of people have, is to be a bit more proactive in the material you have available for sales. So we do this at Dixa by having lots of customer case stories in a number of different formats. So sometimes our guys want a PDF. Here's your PDF. Sometimes they want a Google slide. Here's your Google slide. You know, and so we have these things ready for them to share. Well, I share this article with my sales teams everywhere I've worked because I think it's really interesting because it talks about making the purchasing journey for B2B much easier. And it's kind of very practical things you can do. So they talk about kind of the difference between a responsive approach and a proactive approach. So responsive approach is the lead comes to you and says, hey, I need this and this and this. Can you help me out? And then sales have to go and find it. And then usually sales will contact marketing. Do we have this? Do we have that? Do we, you know, and then marketing's like, well, we kind of have this and we kind of have that. And, you know, and we kind of try to run around and what they found is like, people don't want to do that. Right. The customer doesn't want to have to do that. The customer has enough on their plate. And they did a really interesting study where they kind of surveyed salespeople and then they surveyed customers. And like 86% of salespeople said helping the customer consider all options is important.
Mm,
But actually, what they found was like customers, that number of customers are like, I don't want all my options. I
yeah.
want what I need. I want you to know what I need and just give me what I need. Because what we find a lot in B2B is your champion
Yes.
isn't your decision maker, right? And your
No.
champion's like,
True.
I want your product. I love your product. Again, I think to Plan Day,
It's a very good point.
uh, at Plan Day, you know, we really wanted Dixa, but it was the customer
Uh,
service team who wanted Dixa. So they had to go to their boss, who went to their boss, who went to their boss. So imagine if you could, and this is something that I haven't cracked yet, but I definitely want to be able to do it, is, you know, Casper, you became a lead.
mm,
Hey, Casper, thank you so much. Really looking forward to this demo that we're going to do with you
yeah.
because we've worked with customers just like you, businesses just like you. We know that this person and this person should probably be part of the demo. So maybe we
Mm,
try to make sure that they're part of the demo. We also know that your procurement team will probably want this and this and this. So we have this checklist for you.
yeah.
Here is a case study from a similar customer. Here's what they found. You know, and imagine just being able to give them this kind of material all set up. We're GDPR compliant. Here's what you need to show your legal team, and
Yeah.
giving them everything rather than having Casper go, oh, by the way, Jen, I could really use your GDPR policy. By the way, do
Yeah.
you, you know, and so if you're more proactive at it, you just remove those obstacles.
And that for me is that becomes more like that becomes tying the buyer journey into the sales process, right?
Yes.
Because the sales process is that's maybe a whole different episode in itself. But that's
Hmm.
also that's something I actually studied a lot and worked a lot with, because I think that's super important for everything we do in marketing as well. Like it's part of the whole thing.
Hmm.
But but being able to do that, I actually like, the thing is, I think you could do that. Like
Hmm.
technically, I think you could, like, I almost say want to say easily do that, because it's just suggestions, right? So once you have, like, let's say somebody signs up for a demo, then you can automatically have send your email. The first email says, "Hey, introduction, blah blah blah," maybe, and
Hmm.
then instantly also it pulls in data on the company you work for and the C-level executives.
Hmm.
Like I could actually, now that I think about it, this is just brainstorming then. But here's an idea for the listeners. But that is actually not that hard to do, I think. So you could actually do that, and
Yeah, exactly.
delivering all the material. Like, of course, that's the easy part. The thing is, this it's people always end up not doing it, right? Like it's
And
I
that's,
don't know why,
yeah.
but like we should definitely be better at that, I think.
Well, I think we all get, as much as we try to break down silos, we do get into silos because
Yeah,
my my targets, for example, are probably based on MQLs,
yeah.
not SQLs, right? Or not, one customers, closed one.
Mm,
That's more sales, so and one of the things we did at Plan Day that was really great is actually marketing got rid of the MQL and we had SAL, sales accepted lead. So that is a lead that
mm,
sales spoke to. They're like,
yeah,
there's potential here. That was our target. And that kind of changed the landscape a little bit because then we were working closer with sales. How can we get this better? Not because I just wanted to hit my targets, but yeah, that helps,
yeah,
Of course, I'm not going to say no to that, but it helped break
no,
down
no,
those silos. And actually, sales invited me to a sales conference, which I thought was really quite interesting. And this is where
yeah,
I heard all the marketing bashing. And
yeah,
I'm sitting there as the head of marketing, like, oh my god, we do that. Oh, I'm really sorry.
yeah. And I think that's actually, like, that's one of the. It's a really good point, because there's two things for me in this. Like one of the things is like, absolutely right. Like I when it comes to metrics, everyone's listening maybe might also know this, but I'm very much keen on not focusing on MQLs and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I have a target, and that's an ARR target for marketing, and then I have an ARR target for the company. That's what
Mhm.
I try to achieve as much as I can, right? And then yes,
Yeah.
it trickles down, and sometimes I have to use other metrics to get there, but that's my overall goal. But I think the fundamental thing I want to say is that you and I, Jen, what we do is we study salespeople, right? Like I
Mhm.
spend a lot of time on weekly calls with salespeople. I stay up to date. I try to stay as close to them as I can, and I study sales processes. I study all that stuff. Now I'm gonna ask, if you're a salesperson listening to this, what we in marketing would want is the reverse as well. Like, and I've met, don't get me wrong, I've met a bunch of salespeople who do that. A lot of salespeople actually
Mhm.
really get marketing. There's also a lot of people who don't. And in order for it to like be synergistic, there has to be a common level of understanding of what you can do. Because
Mhm.
like oftentimes you get these like requests in the door. We've all been there. We're like, hey, can you make this thing? Or hey, can we do this thing? Can we target this person? And it's like, yes, I can. Just say the word. Like we already
Yeah.
do that. Like
Yeah.
or
Well, you
stuff like
find,
that, right?
I don't know about you, but you kind of find where people are like, why aren't you doing this? It's like, tell me.
Yeah,
Tell me what you want me to do. I'm
yeah.
happy to do those things. And of course, not all salespeople understand marketing. You wouldn't expect them to understand the ins and outs of marketing. But what I would find a lot of times when we have the silos is sales would just, it would be like a Friday bar where one of the sales guys is like, man, these leads are shit. And you're like, don't tell me after 4 beers on a Friday.
No,
Tell me at the
exactly.
time, look, a
That
lot of
should
these
be
leads, here's the problem. Let's
and
fix it. And then we can fix it.
I remember like we're setting this up at United FinTech, so we have like an inbound team that takes care with, that's a mix of the outbound team and stuff, and those guys are like, together with the salespeople, are like gonna be my best friends. I put so much effort into being good friends with these guys, and I say to
Mm,
them, every time you get a lead that you think, Casper, I did not like this lead, I want you to tell me. I want you to
mhm,
physically write to me or call me or whatever. Say, Casper, I just talked to this person. This was wrong.
mhm.
Okay, cool, because then I adopt. Like, and that's
And then you
actually,
can see where they came from. You can see the
I can
audience.
see
You
where
can
it
see
came
the,
from. I can say,
yeah.
okay, wow, because actually, like, I have an example from the company I was in, the compliant, like just before here. and I got a lead in that was I think it was like a project manager or something like
Mhm.
that. And on the front surface, I would be like, "That's a good lead, big company, project manager. Ooh, love it."
Mm.
And I remember talking to the BDRs after, like, and you're like, "Yeah, but like, you didn't really get GDPR. Like, it was just like, it's not that person wasn't really like there was some compliance system, right? Like, they didn't really get it. Like, it was not definitely not the right stakeholder." And if I had not talked to the BDR, like in this case, we sat next to each other, it's kind of easy. But generally
Mhm.
speaking, if I didn't talk to that person, I would never have known that that was not a good, coming back to ICP, or buyer persona, right? Like, I would have never known that that person was wrong if I didn't talk to sales as much
Mhm.
as I did. And then
Exactly.
I
And
could
there's
go
a
back
yeah.
to LinkedIn, adjust, say, okay, I don't want project managers or anything.
Exactly.
Then
And
I
you
then
can
we
tweak.
then I could
Sometimes you can tweak.
investigate it and discovered,
Mhm.
okay, project managers don't look that good actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I think and that's a really good point of like some of these are such easy fixes. It's like
Yeah.
literally going into LinkedIn going click, we don't want that anymore. Or changing your ad copy or something like that to be a little bit more focused on this. One of the things I also think that to kind of get this conversation going with sales, maybe for those listening who maybe don't talk to sales that often, or you are very siloed. I went to the Challenger conference for the Challenger sales methodology, which is really, really interesting. Highly recommend anyone look into it. But
Okay.
they talked about yup versus wait. And this is a really cool concept because it's like, what makes that stakeholder go, yep, let's do this versus hold up, let me check,
Ah,
you know,
yeah.
and that's what they call it. And
Right.
that's where you really need to sit with sales, right? You need to figure out what is it that makes people say yes. What verifiers do you use to determine where they are on the path? Where is this customer right now? What do they need? What stakeholders are involved? So, and sales know this. We shouldn't know that because we're not the ones holding the demos. We're not the ones doing, the pitches. We are getting them in.
Yeah.
So what stakeholders are involved? What are the roadblocks? What do
Yeah.
usually people go, okay, I just need to check whatever that is.
Mm.
So what gives the yup, what gives the wait? And this is something that you really need to ask sales. And then what can you do to overcome those roadblocks? As I said, is it, hold on, I need to check with legal to make sure that you're GDPR compliant. We've already got that covered here,
Yeah. Exactly.
or I need to do a procurement checklist. We've already got that covered. Here you go. Like, what can marketing give you that rather than, hey, this lead Casper really, really wants to see this, and then marketing have to scramble to make this we don't have the time or resources to do these one-off bespoke pieces of
Mm.
content for every single lead. Where can we do the 80-20 principle? 20% of the work is going to get 80% of the effectiveness. How can we do that? And mapping the journey is a really great step. And that's what I did with my sales team. A whiteboard, lead comes in. What
Mm.
happens next? Okay, they do
Yeah.
this. Sometimes you'll get like, oh, I don't do that. Oh, I do this. And you see that even sometimes they have different approaches. And
Yeah.
mapping everything out and just trying to figure out, okay, where are the leaks?
Yeah. And I mapped the initial sales process, but what happens after, I need to be better at mapping that. I think a lot of people need to be better at mapping that, but maybe that's just me.
No,
I
I
think that's
think
a
you have
great
a lot.
note to end on.
Yeah.
So let's call it. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
great
you very
day.
much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.